Welcome to episode 43 of the Travel Calumet Original Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Sense, and joining me for today's episode is Pat Rowland from Rowland's Calumet Brewing Company in Chilton, Wisconsin. Welcome to the show, Pat.
Yep, good morning.
You have an iconic establishment here in downtown Chilton. It's it's one of those beautiful buildings that people drive by and they say, what's there? And the building's been here for quite a while, I know that, but what makes your company such a unique and a must-see stop for people visiting Calumet County?
Well, for starters, the building that we originally housed our brewery in was Chilton's first firehouse and first city hall. It was completed by 1874. My exterior walls are 18 inches thick. When we started the brewery, we brought in a structural engineer to check how much weight we could put on the floors. And when we took him down in the basement, his reaction was, wow, you could drive a truck through here. So this became a tavern in 1937. My parents bought the bar in 1983, and then we put the brewery in 1990. At that time, we were the city of Chilton was the smallest city in the United States to house a brewery. We were the third smallest brewery in the nation. We were the fourth in the state to serve on premise, the seventh microbrewery, and there were less than 200 breweries in the entire United States. There's now over 20,000.
There's really been an explosion in the microbrew business, and we kind of talked before the show here a little bit about how there's maybe been an oversaturation.
Oh, definitely. Unfortunately, it's become much like restaurants, so people are in and out in 3 to 5 years or less.
But you keep pounding at it, and you keep being a success.
It hasn't been easy, but we're hanging in there.
Yeah. Could you walk listeners through what they're going to find if they come in for a tour or they see the place?
So right now we're off season, and I believe I've got 6 beers on tap. In the summer, I've got 11 beers and root beer on tap. We make our root beer year-round, non-alcoholic, of course. But in a normal season, I'm making 30 to 40 different varieties of beer.
And it's ranging from
the lights to the dark. I do make an IPA. Not a big fan. I basically make it for one of my buddies, so he shuts up once in a while.
Okay, all right. So if I have a request, I should just throw it at you and maybe.
Well, yeah, I do the whole gambit, the whole color spectrum. Okay. From a light beer like a Kolsch to an imperial stout that I age in a bourbon barrel.
Okay, and you mentioned you offer the root beer. How long have you been offering root beer?
Since our first year in business.
Okay, and is it real popular, I'm assuming?
Oh, absolutely. I make close to 100 gallons of finished root beer a month.
So where can people actually purchase your product besides right where we're sitting?
On the back of our Beer Fest flyers, we've got a list of some of the local taverns and that type of thing that carry our products. We've got it at about roughly 20 places.
And it's really more of a central eastern.
Yeah, within probably say 20 or miles-ish from the city of Chilton.
So you've been a microbrewer and you've stayed a microbrewer. You haven't branched off and go out to
Minnesota,
Iowa, places like
No, out of state, that has to do with different licensing. That's another whole ball game right there. Okay. We also don't bottle. We do fill growlers at the brewery, which is a half-gallon glass container to go.
So people can pick those up here? Or?
Yeah, ideally they come in, try a couple of beers. If they find one they like, right now we're at $18 on a growler and $12 on a refill, and that's for a half gallon of beer.
Okay. Can people actually walk in and sit down and have a beer?
Yeah, exactly. We're just a regular tavern. We open, I think, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 2 o'clock, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday at high noon. Okay.
And when people walk in, what kind of reaction do you see on people's faces?
We've got it's almost kind of like a little museum-ish with some of the artwork, and the back bar is pre-Prohibition. So that pre-Prohibition, the Art Deco, ranges from like the early 1900s to 1920. And the bar top, the bar and the floor are original to 1937.
And then when I walked in, I noticed there's windows that are currently behind me on the, I guess that would be the...
That's just storage.
That is storage up
so
there.
This is a 2.5-story building,
mm-hmm.
And so the ceilings in here are 14 feet high. The reason being, when it was a firehouse where the front door was located, they would have had harnesses for the horses, and the pumper actually sat in the main room of the bar, probably roughly where the pool table sits. And they would have lowered that with a pulley system onto the horses to strap them up to head out the front door. I had a guy on the fire department look at the apparatus that they used. To my knowledge, and I don't know a lot, but there were two types. One was basically you needed a hot fire. The other one was a chemical. So they would mix two chemicals together, which would create a reaction, cause heat, which starts the pumping action. But in order to put out a fire, they still had to get to a water source, prime the pump, and then lay out their hose. And that's why Chicago burned down. The technology was there, but by the time they started to put out the first one, the fire was 4 buildings down.
Let's jump from the Chicago fire, which is very interesting, to it's April. Every May, the iconic Rowland's Calumet Brewing Company hosts the Wisconsin Microbeers Beer Fest in Chilton, Wisconsin, at the Calumet County Fairgrounds. The long-running fest has provided patrons with the opportunity to sample more than 100 types of beers brewed by more than 20 Wisconsin breweries. This year's fest is set to be held on May 18th from 1 to 6 p.m. at the Calumet County Fairgrounds. And what do you got going on this year? Just want to give listeners an idea of things that you're offering at the Beer Fest this year.
So this being our 34th Beer Fest, ideally, how should I put this? So what they do is you get a bottomless mug for 5 hours. We've got 3 buildings, 2 bands, and it's just a great big party. This isn't a Sunday social where they're sipping beer. This is a beer drinkers beer fest. So people do need to plan ahead as far as designated drivers or hop a bus or that type of thing. But it's a good time. We've got Copper Box and Tom Schneider, which is the 2/5 party band. It's 2/5 of the Jerry Schneider band. Okay. So that's why he named it the 2/5. Okay. Jerry, his father, has pretty much retired from the band business after about, 60 years.
Okay. So you have live music and beer. Do you have food available?
Yes, food is available for purchase. In the past, we've had different youth organizations. We had the Chilton ACs for a number of years. We had the football team that was running the concessions. Currently, we've got Marco's Barbecue out of Brewing, and they run the food stand, but Marco doesn't have a large enough staff. So we have the VFW are his employees for the day, and they get a percentage of the sales for that day.
Okay, and we're talking about how many people will attend?
Pre-COVID numbers, we were close to 3,000. We're just under 2,000 lately.
Okay.
But you never know. Basically, as tickets sell, we've got contact numbers for the brewers. If we need more beer, we'll just tell them to bring more.
Okay. So you mentioned you have tickets. This is something I can't just show up at. I need to actually.
Yes. So Beer Fest is always a Sunday before Memorial Weekend. So over the years, that'll range from the 17th to the 23rd, and this year it's May 18th. To purchase tickets, they can either do this at our bar or through the mail. But if they do it through the mail, they need to enclose a self-addressed stamped envelope for the return tickets. It sucks because it usually costs me about $100 in postage just to mail back everyone's tickets.
Okay.
Unfortunately, postage isn't cheap anymore.
Yeah. So if I decide, I'm a procrastinator and I didn't get around to getting the ticket before and I walk up, am I going to be turned away?
Well, we personally do not sell tickets the day of Beer Fest. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody else didn't purchase them and they have one available. It's kind of funny. I've got a search engine on Google, more or less. And I've seen the tickets appear on eBay and Craigslist, Marketplace. It's actually kind of funny. I don't deal in the secondary market at all, though.
But everybody else does.
Yeah.
On your behalf.
Yeah.
Okay. So this year's event, as mentioned, is the 34th annual. How is it going to differ from events that you did way back when you first did them back in, what would that be, like 1990 something?
Right. We've got it set up pretty well. So when we sell the tickets, we've got basically, like any event, you've got some fixed costs as far as the buildings, the bands. But then we start dialing in the portlets, let the food vendor know approximately how many people so he can order accordingly. The last 2 years at Beer Fest, we have a 50-50 raffle every year. The Lions hold the 50-50 raffle license. The last 2 years, the money went to the Matt Colby Foundation. They built, I believe it was a $900,000 handicap accessible park here in the city of Chilton. This year, it's the wrestling club. They're looking at updating their facilities at the school, and they're going to be the ones selling the tickets. So in order to run Beer Fest, obviously we can't do this ourselves. We've got a lot of somewhat volunteers, family, friends. We make donations to the Lions Club. Now, the Lions help us park the cars. They help the Brewers load and unload. Sometimes the Brewers just show up and they don't have any help. So the Lions basically will take over their stand briefly so they can use the facilities or grab a sandwich in between. At the end of Beer Fest, some of the Lions members are on the fire department. We make a donation every year to the Chilton Fire Department. They bring up the old water tanker, and after the buildings are swept out, they hose the building out. Nothing's cleaner than cleaning it with a fire hose. It's kind of funny that, I don't know if you're familiar with the Lions organization, what they do is they make these guys pay dues, and then they make them work. And then all the money that they collect, they give back to the community that they're in. So one of the other things they do that day, the Lions will be selling cigars. And aside from the cigars, over the years, they decided to sell peanuts. You could get I believe it's a 1 pound bag. At some point, someone had mentioned to them that they should do pretzel necklaces too. They really had no interest in putting this together. My oldest son was in Boy Scouts at the time, so I approached the troop about putting together the pretzel necklaces and weighing out the peanuts for the Lions. So this is how the Lions organization works. They purchase all the pretzels and all the peanuts. The kids weigh out all the peanuts, put them into bags. They make the pretzel necklaces, put them in little Ziploc bags. The Lions then, stand at Beer Fest, sell the peanuts and the pretzels. But they give the kids all the money. So they paid for the peanuts and the pretzels, and then all the money that they took in, they hand over to the Boy Scouts, which is kind of cool.
It is very cool. You mentioned the 2 musical acts.
Yep.
Is that a departure from years past, or is this...
We've had Copper Box for quite a while. And Jerry Schneider, when he started, has always been a staple at Beer Fest. Unfortunately, 1 year at Beer Fest, this was kind of a little funny story. Jerry had booked a 50th wedding anniversary, and they booked this thing 10 years in advance of us ever starting our Beer Fest. And when Jerry had to play that gig, we had Kirby, who at the time was the brewmaster at Capitol. He's now the brewmaster at the Wisconsin Brewing Company. And Kirby said that he would attend Beer Fest, but under protest because Jerry Schneider was not there. Okay. Kirby likes his polka. You'll see him at Beer Fest. So what's funny is normally at Beer Fest, because we've got 2 bands, usually the brewers don't like to be parked right next to the band. It's kind of a bummer for them. It's a little loud, that type of thing. So we rotate the brewers and take turns, except for Kirby. Kirby likes, now the 2/5 party band, and his stand will be just to the right of the band. And literally he anchors that spot. Loves the music, loves it. Everybody else we try to rotate because it gets a little loud over there.
So if someone comes for the day, what things should they bring with them? What are they allowed to bring, and what can't they bring?
Plan ahead. So you're going to need to eat a good breakfast while you're at Beer Fest. At some point, eat a sandwich, drink a bottle of water. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So you need to pace yourself. It just for a long day. Bring your own lawn chair if you plan on sitting. We don't, why we don't, grills, why there are no grills allowed. 1 year I had a guy set up a big Weber grill in between 2 buildings right in the traffic path. And, people are drinking, and it's pretty easy to turn around and bump into somebody's grill that you didn't expect to be there. And we just saw that as a possible injury waiting to happen. We also don't allow carry-ins. when somebody brings in a cooler, we tell them to go put it back in their vehicle, on the bus, whatever. At that event, when people bring in their ticket, if it's questionable, we're going to look for IDs. But if somebody's got a cooler, I can't stop what they do and hand a beer to someone that was underage. And considering we're the bartenders for the day, I can't have that going on.
Okay.
But in a way, it's kind of silly because this is like eating a sandwich before you go to the all-you-could-eat buffet. You could just wait at 1 o'clock for it to start.
Yeah.
Sometimes they think they need a primer, and realistically, they don't.
All right. What's the most rewarding aspect of the day for you, Pat?
It's cool. You're looking at probably close to $20,000 is raised that day for the community. And then the local bars after Beer Fest, the grocery stores, the gas stations, the campsites, like High Cliff State Park, Calumet County Park, our Best Western here in town, they'll be full. And it's nice because that money does stay in town.
Has there been any thoughts of expanding it to go to a wider, bigger venue at all?
Not in our area. The facilities up at the fairgrounds are pretty ideal for a very large crowd.
Okay.
So that and, at some point when we were close to the 3,000 people, there was talk of, we had mentioned, we had discussions about expansion. But there isn't enough labor. So we're basically controlling this by the amount of people we can get to work that day. There aren't large, big organizations here in town. The biggest, roughly, is the Lions Club, and they're stretched pretty thin to the point that they're using their wives and children to help out.
When someone purchases a ticket, Pat, and let's say they order it by mail or however, you accept checks then, personal checks for that process?
Yep.
Okay, and
Yep.
then do you sell them online? You said?
No, we don't do online. We're kind of all old school.
Okay.
Like at the bar here, I don't even accept credit cards, but there is an ATM.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure there's a fee associated with it. I don't know. I don't use ATMs. Ironically, when I tell people that the last time I used what would be now considered an ATM, it was called a time machine. And people were like, what? It stood for Take Your Money Everywhere. I guess I'm getting a little long in the tooth.
No, not at all. What would you suggest for people that are ordering tickets via the mail? When do you think that the drop dead date they should get their request into you by?
Our cutoff date is about 2 weeks prior to the event. So once we start hitting May, it's a little dicey. We make ideally, just most recently, the flyers have all been sent out roughly right about St. Patty's Day. I'm still dealing with some returns as far as people move constantly. And so those I'll rewrite. I've got a stack of updated addresses and removals because after 6 months, or sometimes people don't leave a forwarding address.
Okay.
But about the beginning-ish of May, at that point, they really should come to town. Funny side story on that. I had a guy one time, couldn't tell you what state he was from. He didn't want to drive, and he said, but I have to have a ticket. And I said, well, and I was on the phone, and I looked across the street. We got the State Bank of Chilton, and I said, boy, I don't know what this would cost you, but could you wire the money to the bank? And because this was like 2 days before Beer Fest, and then, and something I really don't want to do, we basically set up a will call where he had to go to the stand and say, hi, I'm Dave so-and-so, and they're holding 2 tickets for me, and that type of thing. He wired the money. I asked the bank, they wouldn't tell me exactly what the charge was on that. I couldn't tell you. But he was desperate and needed to go and last minute stuff.
But he was glad he came, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, plan ahead.
Yep. There you go. All right. Well, again, the date is May 18th, runs from 1 to 6.
Correct.
You need to purchase your ticket in advance, so make sure you take care of that as soon as possible. There's going to be at least 2,000 of your best friends there, so be mindful of that. Pack for that accordingly. Bring your own lawn chair. Am I missing anything as a reminder for everybody?
It is Wisconsin, so dress appropriately.
Okay.
But, pay attention to the weather. It could change, whether you're wearing rain gear.
So is it it's a rain or shine event? I'm
Yep,
assuming?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, and you are in which pavilion at the
We use
fair?
the two large buildings at the fairgrounds, plus the building behind it, and those building names. I know the small one in the back is called the Murky,
Okay.
and the two in the front are the the Geldy building. And then I can't think of the name of the other one, but it's right next to the Geldy building.
Okay.
They're literally the largest two buildings that they have on the facility.
So if it's a major downpour, you're not going to get
Yeah,
too
we've got some cover. Although people do bring the 10 by 10 pop-ups along with their lawn chairs and that type of thing.
So if somebody is looking for more information about the event,
Well, we do have a website. It's
Okay.
RowlandsBrewery.com, and then we are on Facebook. I've got 2 pages, one for the bar, the Roll-In, one for the brewery, Rowland's Calumet Brewing Company, and we also have a group page. Usually when I post on one, I post on all of them.
okay.
But so if they're looking for more info, or just stop in, check out a flyer, get on our mailing list.
Sounds great. Okay. Well, thank you, Pat. Appreciate you being a guest today on the Travel Calumet Original Podcast. Always great to hear about what's going on here and at your establishment, and continued success to you as you go forward. And hopefully you have a really beautiful day in May for the Beer Fest this year. And listeners, thanks for tuning in to episode number 43. And please make sure to check out our other 42 episodes of the Travel Calumet Original Podcast by clicking on the microphone on the homepage of travelcalumet.com. And if you liked what you heard today or on the previous episodes, please help us spread the word on all the great things taking place here in Calumet County by taking the time to tell a few friends and encourage them to listen to the Travel Calumet Original Podcast as well. Thanks for listening, and until next time.